Welcome to the Stronger Than Steel podcast with your host, Austin Davidson and John Keir, talking Steelers all the time. Now, here's Austin and John.
Hello, and welcome back to another edition of the Stronger Than Steel podcast. John Keir with you here today, just a solo episode. Austin and I have been busy lately and weren't able to get a preview episode for the Titans out, but there wasn't a whole lot to say, just excited to see the starters, and boy, we were rewarded with a pretty solid performance by the Steelers starters on offense and defense. This is Season 4, Episode 23, so we're going to be talking about the Titans game, recapping that a little bit, and then we'll focus our attention to tonight's game between the Steelers and Panthers, the preseason finale, as we know, this year in Carolina. And we'll have a lot to get to as far as that goes. But first, let's just start with the Titans game. So the Steelers win 18-6, and we saw some decent burn from the starters, particularly, eyes on Ben Roethlisberger and guys like Juju Smith-Schuster. The offense kind of got off to a little bit of a slow start. They had their first two drives only netted a little, I think it was just like 50 yards, and they punted both times. But things changed after a solid punt by Jordan Berry, pinning the Titans deep in their own end of the field, I think inside their own 5, actually. And 2 plays later, Stephon Tuitt and Cam Hayward team up on a stunt play that gets Tuitt a sack in the end zone, and the Steelers get the ball back right away and then march right down the field with the starting offense. Several nice short passes and a few nice runs by James Conner, and then Ben Roethlisberger hits Juju Smith-Schuster for a really nice-looking 17-yard pass play in the end zone. Smith-Schuster finally broke free after struggling a little bit earlier, and Roethlisberger hit him in stride. And so the starting offense, after having a couple of iffy drives to start the game, they were able to get into gear on their third drive. They took it 58 yards in just 9 plays and scored a pretty convincing touchdown. That was all we saw of Ben Roethlisberger. He finished 8 of 13 for 63 yards with a touchdown. Not a whole lot to say. He was a little inaccurate on the day, but a lot of his passes were short. I think that was by design. You don't want him to get hit, obviously, in this game. Plus, the Titans were playing a lot of deep coverage in this game, so the Steelers were taking the underneath stuff. And Ben Roethlisberger's been he's been made a... You just think about how I want to say this. Ben Roethlisberger has been known as a deep passer most of his career, but the last few years he's become especially efficient when it comes to the dink and dunk game, and he has no problem doing that, and that's what we saw a lot of on Sunday night. And then when the Titans started rolling up their safety, that's when we saw Roethlisberger go to Smith-Schuster, the one-on-one coverage in the end zone. So, Roethlisberger just shaking off the rust, and, not a whole lot to report. He looked pretty good. James Conner, I thought, looked really good. He only had 5 carries, but he had 41 yards on those carries, including a long 21-yard run where he juked Adoree Jackson on the run. He was solid. The offensive line didn't even allow a hit on Roethlisberger. Roethlisberger had been talking about looking forward to getting hit for the first time and just getting that out of the way, but he's going to have to wait till week 1. The offensive line didn't even get him touched. So, obviously the offensive line doing their job there. And the ground game was pretty solid too. Jaylen Samuels had an 11-yard run on his long of the day. It was a broken play, actually, and it was a pretty nice run. But outside of that, Smith-Schuster looked solid. There really isn't a whole lot to say about the starting offense beyond that. Status quo, I guess you could say. And I can't really, I can't make too much of just 3 drives with the starting offense. I don't want to say they're primed for a great year, or just conversely, if they hadn't gotten a first down, I'd be a little concerned, but I wouldn't be like it's going to be a bad year either. So. Again, it's a preseason, so don't take a whole lot away from it, but, it's obviously good to see that they performed well as opposed to not looking so good. Then Mason Rudolph came in, had a couple drives I think just one drive with the starting unit. In fact, it was just 2 plays, and on the second of which, this was after what was it? I believe it was, just a punt. The Titans had went backwards on 3 plays after Ryan Tannehill had been sacked again, but this time Stephon Tuitt had his second sack, and the Titans punted from their own 5, so the Steelers had a short field. And Mason Rudolph hooked up with James Washington, surprise, surprise, for his third 40-yard grab of the preseason, third consecutive week, and a touchdown to boot. So Washington picking up right where he left off, and Rudolph hit him right in stride. And so these were back-to-back drives, by the way. So the Steelers quickly went up by 2 scores there. And Rudolph looked pretty solid again, 6 for 9 for 75 yards and a touchdown. He did throw an interception later in the game that was a miscommunication. I'm not quite sure who to pin that on, but I guess you'd rather see that now than during the season. So I think Rudolph looked solid again. And then the offense kind of got stagnant from there. As the backups came in, things got a little more sloppy, but we did see some nice things. Josh Dobbs came in and played the entire second half, and we didn't see any of Devlin Hodges, but Dobbs only went 4 of 9 for 79 yards and did throw a pick. But I do want to emphasize that I don't think that interception is really on him. It got tipped off the hands of Zach Gentry and was into the arms of the defender. Now, Mike Tomlin did criticize his play and said that he needs to be better, and that's true, but I do, and Austin would agree with me that this was Dobbs' best performance of the preseason, and he's being rewarded by being able to start tonight's game against the Panthers. He's going to play the first quarter. Elsewhere, not a whole lot offensively. Trey Griffey caught a pass on a nice play by Dobbs. Moncrief had a couple snags. Vance McDonald I didn't think looked good. He was targeted twice. One got knocked down. It was a bad decision by Roethlisberger to throw it to him. Another was just a plain drop by McDonald, and I guess you'd rather get those out of the way now too. Brandon Riley had a couple nice catches. One a 30-yarder from Josh Dobbs on a free play because he got the defense to jump. It was a nice throw and a nice catch. I kind of forgot Riley was on the team. I know that's kind of not the nicest thing to say, but I honestly didn't know that he was there. So, it's nice to see that he performed well in this game too. So I guess let's kind of flip our focus here to the defensive side. Now, I've never been crazy about the Titans' offense, particularly Marcus Mariota or Ryan Tannehill. So I don't know how much of an indictment this is on their quarterback play and offensive line, or if it's just the Steelers' defense might be that much better. Again, it's the preseason. Don't want to read too much into it, but Marcus Mariota only attempted 3 passes, got sacked for the safety, and didn't even complete one. So Mariota got pulled pretty quickly, and he didn't look all that good while in the game. Tannehill didn't look great either. He got sacked 3 times himself, and he only threw 9 passes in the game. He led the Titans to a field goal, but wasn't doing a whole lot besides that. Logan Woodside, the third stringer, came in and had a pretty solid day, but the game was pretty much decided by that point. You had backups in the game as well. And man, what can you say about the starting defensive front? Stephon Tuitt and Bud Dupree are 2 guys that we've been talking about for years now, as guys that could be the guys that are like good and solid players, but do they have that extra gear? And for Tuitt, I know that he has that extra gear, and we saw it in this game, 2 sacks and 2 quarterback hits in limited time with the starting unit. He looked really good. Cam Hayward had a sack and had a nice play on a 3rd and 17 screen where he tracked down the ball carrier on the screen and tackled him right at the line of scrimmage. You love to see that kind of effort from your team captain in a preseason game. That's the kind of leading by example that you like to see. Bud Dupree, I know he didn't show up on the stat sheet, but man, he looked really good out there rushing the passer. So did TJ Watt. Just a lot to like from the Steelers' defense in this game. Applying consistent pressure and not really giving up much in terms of ground anyways. I didn't feel like the Titans ran the ball a ton anyways, and I know Derrick Henry didn't play. But, all things considered, this was a pretty solid defensive performance that included 8 sacks? 7 sacks. Included 7 sacks. And, there's really, I guess I'll just kind of transition to the camp darling, and that is Tuzar Skipper, who had another sack in this game. I think that makes 4 this preseason. He's been really good, and for everyone clamoring for him to get on the roster, I do understand it, and I'd love to see him make the team. He's played 3 special team snaps, and they came after Anthony Chickillo left injured in the Kansas City Chiefs game last week. So I find it hard to believe that he's going to make this team, and Austin concurred with me in this matter. Look, your bottom end of the roster guys have to be able to play special teams, and if he isn't even doing it in practice, it's not going to happen in the game, and it's not going to translate. I mean, you could say that the Steelers aren't playing him on special teams because they don't want him showing out and therefore making him a hot commodity for teams to possibly snag from the Steelers practice squad, because I think that's where he's going to end up. But I think he could still stash Skipper on the practice squad early in the year and not have to worry about it. If he's only offering stuff as a pass rusher, you're not going to just claim him. You'd claim a guy to play him, and Skipper is a guy that you'd claim to just sit on the bench. And I mean, we haven't seen enough from him. He's a nice player, and don't get me wrong, I'd like to have him on the team. I'm not sure that from a numbers standpoint, it's going to work in this instance. Terrell Edmunds looked solid as well. He had a nice pass breakup where he diagnosed the play and made a big hit. That's a play that he'd have been behind on a year ago, but you can see the growth from year 1 to year 2. Just a pretty solid play all around. Not a lot of losers. I saw someone listing Artie Burns as a loser. I didn't even think he played that badly. He was slightly out of position on a couple plays and missed 1 tackle, but he still held up the ball carrier long enough for someone, or it was actually Cameron Kelly, to get in there and force a fumble. So, I mean, I don't think he played badly. I really only think the one loser you could take from this game is Vance McDonald. And, I mean, he got targeted twice. Is the one drop makes him a loser, And it wasn't even like the game was on the line. It was early in the first quarter. So, I mean, there was a lot to like about this game. And as far as dress rehearsals go, this is about as good as it gets on both offense and defense. And not to mention special teams, too. Ryan Switzer didn't have eye-popping stats, but I don't know. He looked good back there. And I think that this is going to be... I don't want to call him a lock per se, but I think he pretty much stamped his place on the team. It's going to take a lot from a guy like Deontay Spencer to take his job. I guess that's another loser, is Johnny Holton. Holton didn't really show anything in this game, and I think he's fighting for a practice squad spot right now. All right, let's turn our attention to the Steelers and Panthers game that's coming up tonight. So, obviously, this is the game where the fewest regulars play. Here are some guys that I think we should be keeping our eyes on. Obviously, we want to pay attention to the bottom of the roster, because this is where the final roster spots get decided. One guy is Ulysses Gilbert. Everyone's been talking about Devin Bush with good reason, but Gilbert's been a guy that has looked pretty solid on special teams. He has 11 tackles this preseason, and he's played, I think, over 100 snaps so far in this preseason. He's got to be one of the guys on the short list, either first guys out or last guys in. He's probably not a defensive player right now, but he's athletic. He has the mold of a guy that could be a defensive player, possibly in a couple of years or maybe even next year. But he can definitely play some special teams, and that's something the Steelers are going to be looking for. I want to see what he can do in this last game. I'm looking at Tuzar Skipper as well. I'm really hoping to see that he can play some special teams. I'm not sure if we're going to see that, but if there's any time for him to play special teams, it would be in this game. Let's see him play as much as possible. I want to get one last good look at Tuzar Skipper, and maybe he can show out. We'll see. Another position to look at is safety. Now, Cameron Kelly he's making this team, it looks like. So that last roster spot at safety, it looks like it's going to be down to either Jordan Dangerfield and Marcus Allen. And although Dangerfield has been ahead of Allen for most of the preseason, Allen's had 2 nice games back-to-back weeks. If he can have another solid performance, it's possible that he could usurp Dangerfield for the last roster spot there. It's going to have to come with more solid play on defense, and he's played a lot of snaps on defense lately. but he's going to have to continue to play better on special teams, and I still think there's a chance that he makes it, but it's coming down to Dangerfield and Allen, it looks like, at safety. What else am I thinking here? I'd like to see a little bit more from Devlin Hodges. Obviously, the quarterback position is huge. So it looks like the Steelers are planning on keeping their top 3 guys that we've seen all offseason. But Devlin Hodges has been better than your typical number 4 quarterback, and he didn't play last week. So will the Steelers use a practice squad spot on him? Time will tell. We'll see him for the second half, and it could be the last time we see him in a Steelers uniform. And keeping 4 quarterbacks is usually excessive, but if this guy is good enough to keep, you might want to at least consider it. We'll see. I want to see what he can do. He hasn't had that much time to play in any of the games. Obviously, he didn't play last week, and he only threw 4 passes in the second game, so he's had very, very limited action here so far. I want to see what he can do with the full, kind of a full half to see what he can do. Another guy, this is probably the biggest game for anybody on this team is probably Zach Gentry, the tight end. We already know that tight end is the weakest position of the Steelers team right now, and Mike Tomlin just said they haven't been good enough. And outside of the top 2 in McDonald and Grimble, I've said it for pretty much since I looked at Zach Gentry back before the draft. He's not an NFL tight end right now. The Steelers only have 2 NFL tight ends on their team. That's not to say that I don't think Gentry could become that over the course of the season, but right now, if there were to be an injury to one of the top 2 guys, I still don't see how you could justify playing Gentry significant snaps in any game. He's just not a good enough blocker, and he's not consistent enough. Plus, we haven't seen enough from him. So the fact of the matter is, Gentry, who missed 1 preseason game already, he needs to have a good showing because it's really him versus the rest of the league. Austin and I talked about this. He could still be a practice squad candidate, and if there is someone else out there that the Steelers could either trade for or pick up from waivers on cutdown day, they make no mistake about it, they definitely will do it if they don't like what they see from Gentry. And right now I haven't seen enough. That's not to say I don't want to be labeled as a hater. I like Gentry, and I think that he's a solid player, but I don't think that he's ready to be on an NFL team right now. He's like what Jesse James was when James came into the league, but even more raw and less talented, if that makes sense. So he's not bad. It's just that it's going to take time for him. He's a project. He's still learning the position of tight end. So, just give it some time with him. Other guys I want to see some more from, obviously I want to see more of Justin Lane on the outside. I mean, we've seen some good and some bad play from him this preseason. I want to see more of Deontay Johnson. He hasn't played a lot. He's been injured as well, but he did have a nice touchdown. Should have had 2 touchdowns last week or 2 weeks ago now. And I want to see, this could be the last time we see Deontay Spencer. And he's been explosive, but I just don't think he's done enough to take a guy's roster spot such as, Ryan Switzer or Eli Rogers. He's going to have to run 1 back, maybe 2 back to make this a conversation. He's running out of time, but he's got the explosiveness to do it. And this could be the type of game where you see a play like that being made. What else here? I guess, this would also be a good chance to see. The last thing I'm thinking about here is the running back room. So we know the top 2 guys, and we know Roosevelt Nix is the fullback. Is there really a chance Benny Snell's roster spot is in danger? I mean, he's averaged just over 2 yards a carry so far, but he's also a 4th-round pick, and he's also been injured. He needs to have a nice showing here, particularly on special teams, because Trey Edmonds, if you don't keep Jordan Dangerfield and keep Marcus Allen instead, you could make an argument of keeping Trey Edmonds, who's the personal protector, I should clarify. Jordan Dangerfield and Trey Edmonds at running back are both personal protectors, the quarterbacks, if you will, on the punt team. So if you cut Dangerfield, I have to think you're going to keep Edmonds, the elder Edmonds, that is. And Edmonds has showed that he's a good special teams player. Snell has been solid at it, but the problem is we haven't seen enough from him to know that he can be a consistent option there. And the 3rd running back is going to have to play special teams. So is it possible the Steelers keep 4 backs? I think it's possible. I don't know if they will, but if they do, there's a compelling reason because Snell hasn't shown a whole lot. He's been injured, and Edmonds has looked good. So keep an eye on those two guys in particular. Those are big games for both of them as well. And besides that, just no injuries here, man. We've been relatively healthy so far, and I know there won't be really any or many major pieces playing tonight, but still, this is really a sad week in the NFL. You know, football families, if you will, the rosters are getting trimmed, you know, by basically almost half. You know, like over a third, less than a half, are getting trimmed here. And a lot of guys are going to be putting on the helmet, the shoulder pads, and uniform for the last time. And it really is sad. And, you know, there are great stories that come from the final preseason week, but, you know, it's a lot of backups playing, and it's guys getting injured, and it's the end of the road for a lot of guys. So just remember that tonight when you're watching these games, that this is, you know, human beings playing the sport that they love for what could be the last time. So make sure to just, you know, when you're bored and it's the middle of the third quarter in a blowout preseason game with, you know, the fourth string quarterback playing, just remember that these guys are laying it out on the line for what could be the last time. That being said, next time we podcast, we'll be talking Steelers-Patriots and roster predictions. So a lot to look forward to. But in the meantime, thank you, as always, for joining us on the Stronger Than Steel podcast. If you have any questions, please feel free to email us at strongerthansteelpodcast@gmail.com. We still have 2 spots open for our fantasy football league on NFL.com. It's an IDP league, individual defensive player. No entry fee. We're just doing it for fun this year. If you want to do that, please, again, feel free to check us out on our website, strongerthansteelnfl.blogspot.com. Check out our various social media platforms on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and just reach out to us. We'd be happy to add you. And so thank you again for joining us on the Stronger Than Steel podcast. Have a great day and enjoy tonight's game. We're almost there, everybody. We finally are getting through the preseason tonight, and soon we'll be talking regular season football. It's almost like it never left. So it's a wonderful feeling. But as always, thanks for listening and have a terrific day.
You have been listening to Stronger Than Steel podcast. Thank you for joining us today, and don't forget to check out our website listed in the description below.